But pumas are, an established animal. To have like some cryptozoological creature like Bigfoot that's undetected. But it's fun.
It's fun.
I want to believe.
Yeah.
But I don't really.
Well, that's like in the ocean. Like they find some big fish, or some big whale, like extra, like some, and you're like, I don't know, dude, we never knew it was down there.
There's two.
Well, don't they think aliens could live in the ocean? So, I mean, that's how much.
That was Jeremy Corbell was talking about that the other day. That they, it's hard to say like what kind of information he's getting, how accurate it is. But they're basically saying, think about the movie Abyss, where the aliens lived underwater. He was like, that's probably what's going on.
Yeah.
That there's some sort of alien base underwater or some meeting place, or that's where they hide. That's where they go to be undetected.
Do you think you're going to see it in your lifetime?
Bigfoot or aliens?
Aliens. Like, where it's like, like we have to like talk to them now. We have to like interact with them.
There's a video that is impossible to ignore. There's some things that are impossible to ignore. And then there's eyewitness testimonies of people who are rock solid, totally dependable, like fighter pilots who have seen some things. Like the best example is this guy, Commander David Fravor, who was off the coast of San Diego in 2004. And this is corroborated by multiple points of data. They had this tracking system that tracks things above Earth's atmosphere, and they found this thing went from above 60,000 feet above sea level to 50 feet above sea level in less than a second. They have no idea how it's doing this. They have no idea. There's no method of propulsion that's visible. They followed this thing. They locked onto it. It blocked their radar. It blocked their tracking systems, rather. And then it jetted off at an impossible rate of speed. And then the Nimitz relocated this thing at their cat point. The cat point is where the fighter pilots, when they're doing this test, they're doing this exercise, they were supposed to meet at this very specific point. And that's where this thing had gone. Like this thing had read their manifest and knew, like, or read their plans and knew where they were going.
What's wild?
That is way more compelling to me than Bigfoot. The Bigfoot thing is just fun, but the alien thing is fun and likely. There's something going on. And so I go back and forth. Sometimes I think maybe it's some sort of government drone that's like so sophisticated, and it's totally top secret. And if we ever go to war with China, that's when they're going to break it out. And then sometimes I think what they are is something that's monitoring us and making sure we don't blow ourselves up, making sure that we make this journey from territorial apes with thermonuclear weapons into some sort of an advanced intergalactic society, and that there's a very crucial moment where the instincts of these tribal people, which is all of us, all human beings, are these tribal territorial people, where you have to keep them from sabotaging any possible future progress by blowing themselves up, by killing each other, by
what if we talk to them and then when you say that, they go, yeah, that was it. Is that easy? Like, not that easy, but like, you just go, is that it? You go,
yeah,
that's about it.
We're trying to keep you guys from blowing yourselves up. This is like, but maybe that's like the natural thing that you see. Like when civilizations advance, like there's a very precarious moment where like they have the capability of blowing themselves up, but the reason and the logic to not do it, but they also have these instincts to control resources and take over territories. They still have those instincts, but they have to bypass that. They have to figure out how to, and so that's when aliens start circling and just keeping an eye on us.
Yeah.
That's the primary.
I mean, that's what you would hope, right? Instead of like them attacking us.
Yes.
Because then so.
I think if they were going to attack us, they would have already done it. Like, if they really could do all those things, they could probably take out our power grid pretty easy. Apparently, the stories are that they're able to shut down nuclear launches and nuclear facilities, and that they do that, and they hover over military bases, and that they just shut everything down just to let you know, hey, bitch, I can
That's
just
wild.
flip that switch. So don't get too fucking squirrely out there.
That's so crazy.
The 2017 New York Times article, in my mind, made that was a big shift, because when the New York Times is reporting about it and saying that this is major news and this is real and there's video evidence that they can't ignore, when you talk to high-level people at the government and people like Commander David Fravor, who had that infamous spotting off of the coast of San Diego, when you hear about people like that are very reputable, it starts to change the conversation in a lot of people's eyes.
Right. See, it used to be that one person would see something in the sky and say, look, Martha, look, there's something up there. Now things have changed. Now we have multiple sightings by multiple modes. That is the gold standard for looking for these objects. Not just one person, but several people that are reputable. Not just radar, but visual sighting, infrared sensors, telescopic evidence. Now we have multiple sightings by multiple modes. And so the burden of proof has shifted. It used to be the burden of proof was on the people who believed in UFOs. They saw something, prove it. Now the burden of proof has shifted to the Pentagon, to the military. Now they have to prove that these aren't extraterrestrial. And so I think there's been a sea change in the last just several years. 50 years ago, there was a congressional hearing, and it was coming out of Project Blue Book. And there was a lot of laughter and a lot of jokes about little green men in outer space. 50 years ago, that's the way it was. Now, things have changed. Now people are looking at are they a threat militarily? What kinds of sensors do we have? What kind of metrics do we have? We now have, frame by frame, an analysis of these objects. These objects travel between Mach 5 and Mach 20. That's 20 times the speed of sound. These objects can zigzag, and we can measure the G-force inside this object. The G-forces are several hundred times the force of gravity. In other words, any living person's bones would be crushed by these objects, so they're probably drones of some sort. These objects can drop 70,000 feet in a few seconds. Think about that. It can drop a tremendous distance in just a few seconds, and they can go underwater. This is something that we didn't realize before, but yes, they can actually go underwater. And they also move without creating an exhaust or breaking the sound barrier. So these are things that we can now document frame by frame looking at these videotapes.
So for yourself, what was the shift? And how did you feel about UFOs, say like 10, 15 years ago?
Well, there is this giggle factor, and it's the third rail, of course, of your scientific reputation, if you believe in these things. But the evidence is accumulating over the last several years. Now, when I was first approached by Carolyn Corey, the producer of this film, A Tear in the Sky, I was skeptical. I said to myself, come on. I mean, 5 days? 5 days you're going to look for flying saucers in the sky? What happens if the aliens are camera shy and they don't show up in 5 days? So I was pleasantly surprised when they actually found something. They actually have photographic evidence of objects that can gyrate just the way the Pentagon has said. And so we now have a sea change. A center of gravity has changed with regards to looking at these objects. We no longer simply look at one individual seeing something in the sky. No, we demand hours of videotape, multiple sightings by multiple modes. That's the gold standard now.
So what do you think is happening? Do you think that this is something that maybe another government from another country has created that far surpasses our abilities, or do you think that this is coming from somewhere else?
Well, the Pentagon has listed, I think, 5 different options. One option, of course, is that they're weather balloons or something that's an artifact of our space program. Maybe a piece of rocket that is plunging back into the Earth's atmosphere. That's one category. Another category is anomalous weather events. They happen, and they have to be looked at very carefully. But the last option is other. That is not just the Russians or the Chinese, because these objects apparently can gyrate faster than what the Chinese and the Russians can muster, but it opened the door to the possibility of other. They didn't specify what other was, but you can fill in the dots yourself. Now, one possibility for other is hypersonic drones. We see that in warfare now. the Russians in the Battle of Ukraine is actually using hypersonic drones to hit targets inside Ukraine. To be hypersonic, you have to go faster than Mach 5. Anything faster than 5 times the speed of sound is called hypersonic. And so the Russians are now fielding hypersonic drones in warfare. But you see, this is something just in the last few months. These sightings, they go back decades into the past, with objects executing these gyrations decades ago. And that's why you have to take them seriously.
So the Commander David Fravor event that we talked about off the Nimitz, that was 2004. Do we have an accurate understanding about military capability in terms of like drones and propulsion systems from 2004? Or are there things that are classified that we are not going to have access to? Like, is it possible that, 18 years ago, they had the capability to have a vehicle or a drone move this way, that information has just not been released?
Well, 2 years ago, the United States military admitted that it stopped working on these hypersonic drones. Why? They're unstable. They zigzag. And that's why the Russians have put a premium on this technology to evade our Star Wars program. The Russians wanted a rocket that can maneuver and therefore outwit a stationary Star Wars system designed to shoot down these drones.
Right.
So that's why the Russians have put a priority on this, and they've now fielding in warfare. We actually see them as a military weapon. 2 years ago, the United States military stopped its program. They're too unstable. They were not reliable, and it was not worth the amount of money to put into it because the military was invested in the Star Wars program, not the anti-Star Wars program. But because Vladimir Putin announced the hypersonic drones, then the United States military said, oops, nope, we have to get into the game too. So now the United States is also working on hypersonic drones as well as the Chinese. So the Chinese, the Russians, and the Americans are all working on these things. But you can see how primitive they are. We're talking about objects that defy the known laws of aerodynamics with a technology beyond what we have today. And so that's why people are scratching their heads. Whose are these things if they're not the Chinese, the Russians, or the United States?
So one of the main points of contention is the lack of visible propulsion method. Right? There's essentially, there's no heat signature. There's nothing that we understand to be present that normally exists when something is going at a tremendous rate of speed.
That's right. Not only that, these objects create no sonic booms. When you exceed the sound barrier, you create a gigantic boom that is then shatters windows and can be heard miles around. These objects can effortlessly break the sound barrier and not create a sonic boom. And they don't create any exhaust. We don't see any exhaust trail from these objects. So either they're an optical illusion of some sort, or they have a set of laws of physics beyond what we can muster. Now, if they are an optical illusion, if an object were to move in front of your eyes, traveling at a very slow velocity, but you don't know how far they are away, you may think that object is very far away from you, traveling at enormous velocities. So a weather balloon drifting in front of your eyes can simulate an object traveling at hypersonic velocities if you think that weather balloon is far away from you. So how do you tell the difference? Well, you look at wind patterns. It turns out that many of these sightings, these objects defy the direction of the wind. If they are weather balloons that you confuse with a flying saucer, then they would be moving with the direction of the wind. But these objects do not do that. These objects can go against the direction of the wind. Not only that, but we have multiple sightings. If an object is very, very far away, if an object is close to you, but you think it's far away, then it's traveling at an enormous velocity while it's actually just drifting in front of your eyes. How do you tell the difference? By having multiple sensors, radar, infrared sensors, visual sighting. Then you can tell how far this object is away from you, and then you can say that, no, it's an optical illusion. Well, we do that now. We have multiple sightings of these objects. By radar, we know how the velocity, the distance. Each time it comes out to be real. And so that's why we're scratching our heads. Who has this capability? And the answer is, we don't know.
Is there anything that's theoretical that you're aware of that could be applied, like from some other planet or some other galaxy or whatever, that something that maybe we have theorized that could be responsible for the way these things are able to move?
Well, when I talk to my friends who are physicists like myself about these things, they sort of laugh, giggle, their eyes roll up to the heavens, and they say something very simple, that a rocket using conventional means would take 70,000 years to reach us from the nearest star. Therefore, these objects cannot exist. 70,000 years for a Saturn rocket traveling at 25,000 miles per hour to go from a nearest star to the planet Earth. That's why most scientists disregard these sightings, because they defy the laws of Einstein.
But isn't that kind of silly? Isn't that kind of like saying, you can't, you know how long it would take you to get a horse from Los Angeles to Sydney, Australia? Isn't that kind of like saying that?
Exactly. And that's why I say that assumes that these aliens or whatever are maybe 100 years more advanced than us. But open your mind to the possibility that they are 1,000 years more advanced than us. 1,000 years is nothing compared to the age of the universe.
Right.
The universe is about 13 billion plus years old. That's how the age of the universe. And so the age of a civilization, just a few thousand years ahead of us, that is just a blink of an eye to the universe itself. And once you go to higher energies, the laws of physics begin to break down. The laws of Einstein and the laws of the quantum theory break down at something called the Planck energy. Why is that important? That's what I do for a living. I work on something called string theory, which lives at the Planck energy. The Planck energy is 10 to the 19 billion electron volts. That is a quadrillion times more powerful than our most powerful atom smasher outside Geneva, Switzerland. Any civilization that could harness the Planck energy would be able to become masters of space and time. Space and time as we know it become unstable at the Planck energy, which is far beyond anything that we can muster here on the planet Earth. So, we physicists theorize, how advanced do you have to be to access the Planck energy? Well, we rank them. The Kardashev scale says that there could be type 1, type 2, or type 3 civilizations. A type 1 civilization is maybe 100 years more advanced than us, to maybe 1,000 years, sort of like Buck Rogers or Flash Gordon. They control the weather. Volcanoes, earthquakes, anything planetary, they control. That's type 1. Then there's type 2. Type 2 is stellar. They harness the power of an entire star, like Star Trek. Star Trek would be a typical type 2 civilization where they manipulate entire stars. Then there's type 3. Type 3 is galactic. They roam the galactic space lanes. They play with black holes, like the Empire of the Star Wars series would be a typical type 3 civilization. Then the next question is, what type do you have to be to harness the Planck energy? The energy at which space and time become unstable, where wormholes may develop, gateways through space and time, portals through empty space. You have to be type 2 or most likely type 3. Then the next question is, how long will it take before you become type 3? Well, we are maybe 100 years away from being type 1. We're maybe a few thousand years from being type 2, and we're maybe 100,000 years from being type 3. And 100,000 years is nothing on a galactic scale. The age of the universe is, as I said, over 13 billion years old. And so once a civilization reaches the Planck energy, that is a type 3 civilization, space and time become your playground.
Let's take it back to the day that this happened. You're 22, you're logging, you're in the woods. Tell me what happened.
Well, it's just, when you're done working, hard physical labor, everybody's kind of jacked up, and there was a whole lot of chatter in the car. We're just talking away, it's starting to get dark. We just loaded up our equipment. We're headed out. And I looked up ahead, and I saw this kind of glow coming through the trees. First, I thought, no big deal. You know, it was deer hunting season. Thought maybe there was some hunters camped up on the hill up there. Maybe light shining through a tent. It was still something really strange, kind of caught my eye. And one by one, the other guys in the crew started looking, but nobody said, "Oh my God, what's that?" or anything like that. It was just kind of an idle curiosity at first. But when we burst into the clearing where we could see the source of this glow, it was just, whoa, you know. I mean, it was just mind-blowing instantly. I inexplicably got out of the truck and ran toward this thing. But I thought it was just going to take off, be gone in a flash. And
so when you say in the clearing, so are you driving on a dirt road?
Yeah, it's a dirt road. Trees are real thick. This was a part of the contract we hadn't cut in yet, so trees were a lot thicker there, except for this clearing. And we weren't the only ones that saw it. We found out later. Sheriff had on file people who were in the area that saw it, you know, hunters and fishermen over there at Black Canyon Lake. And the movement that they described was what the crew described when it left. Of course, I didn't see that. But
what did they describe?
They described this glow rising up and streaking off, I believe they said, toward the northeast. There were some people that probably don't want to be public about it, but there was one guy who was just deer hunting, and he worked in military intelligence, and he stuck by what he and his wife saw. They were both together. And another guy that was at Black Canyon Lake, I won't mention any of those guys' names unless they chose to, but found out later that there was more official investigation that nobody talked about at the time. Immediately, though, this was all nonsense, and these guys murdered him, and even my oldest brother, he didn't believe me. He thought they had killed me. What we were doing with the brush that we cut was piling it up. There were piles that were in the clearing so that the Forest Service could burn these piles, you know, when the conditions were right, where it wouldn't spread, you know. Wet conditions otherwise, but burning up this excess material to reduce the fire danger in the woods. And my oldest brother was tearing those piles apart. He was certain that my body was under there. And there were some pretty testy confrontations between him and my brother. And I think even my other brother, Dwayne, he initially took that approach, but he quickly became sure that they were telling the truth.
Now, what do you remember when you were going through your mind and you're trying? I mean, this is a story you've told so many times, and this is a story that's been turned into a film, which it's got to be very surreal. But when you look into your memories and you try to go back to that day.
Well, I don't try. It's something I try to block out, but it's unforgettable. And there's...
What do you remember seeing when you ran into the clearing?
Well, the whole clearing was lit up with this weird glow. It's really hard to for any artist or movie to try to duplicate the strange glow there was there. Made everything look really, really pretty eerie, you know. And
did it have a color to it?
It was kind of a golden color, but with a kind of a softness to it that it wasn't like beams of light shooting out. It was just this haze of light.
And did it seem to come from a specific part of the craft, or?
Most of the surface seemed to be glowing. There were darker areas that didn't give off light, but it was the parts that weren't glowing. It wasn't so bright that you couldn't look at it, but it had a metallic look to it.
So what did the craft itself look like?
It was classic disc-shaped craft. Years later, there was a report. I can never remember names, but this guy was saying that he worked at Area 51, and they had something in there. He worked with the Tester Model Corporation to create a model of what he was describing. And that's actually the closest of any of the other descriptions I've seen. But I don't think these things have just one type of craft. I think there's many, many different shapes.
What makes you think that?
Well, personal experience. I try not to emphasize these other incidents, but I've seen the glowing sphere. I've seen the giant black triangle. Other craft that were a ball of light that you couldn't penetrate the light with your eyes, but
now this is after this experience.
I think the reason my brother Dwayne was persuaded more quickly than my brother Don was that he saw a craft in those woods. That's probably 10 miles from there while deer hunting. And it was kind of tic-tac shaped, and that's something that's been observed by, in military reports recently.
Yeah. So you see this thing, this disc-shaped craft,
Yeah.
and then what happens?
It started to move and started to get louder.
Louder.
Yeah. It was the guys in the truck heard it too. There was a low thunderous kind of a rumble that you actually sort of felt more than heard. And then there were other high-pitched frequencies. I was talking to a group of students from technical college, and they were really interested in what the sound was like to try to, compare that with theories that they had concerning what might be their propulsion. But the increase in volume, it suddenly got louder as it started to move. And, at the same time, the guys in the truck were screaming, "Get away from there, let's go, get back in the truck, let's go." And which would have been the smart thing to do. But as soon as it moved, it startled me, and I just ducked for cover. There was a log there. I got down behind this log, and they were screaming, "Let's go, let's go, let's go." And I didn't need to be told. I was just going to, stand up and run away. But see, when I jumped for cover, I went down and forward to reach where the log would hide me. And that brought me closer to it. So when I stood up, at that point, that was the closest I was to the object.
How close?
It was still like 8 or 10 feet away, from the surface of it. But that was when the energy discharge happened. I've worked on a number of theories about what might have happened. At the time, some of the other guys on the truck were thinking, immediately Steve said, "It got him." Like, if you shot a deer, you got it,
Right.
And so it might not have been as we assumed at first, that it was some kind of stun gun or something, but maybe just closing that gap allowed this energy to leap to ground through me. And
like static electricity or something.
yeah, one thing that really weighs heavy in that direction is that when I found years later that they have satellites or something that record the number of lightning strikes, and that area has the highest frequency of lightning strikes of any place in the continental United States, except for the Everglades. The Everglades has a bit more, but that's over water. So that adds to another theory. What were they doing there? You know?
So that area that has a high level of lightning strikes, do you think it makes sense that they're observing that, or is that why they were there? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, up until a few years ago, you know, you walk down the rim road, and if you see a tree that's been hit by lightning, you can always see it. It's a strip of bark that's just blasted out of there, and it's all bare, and it can actually still survive the lightning strike, but it turns the sap to steam instantly, and it just explodes out the side of the tree, blows the bark off. But I was at a conference where this lady was. I said, "What's this?" And she says, "That's Fulgarite." I said, "What's that?" And she says, "That's when lightning strikes the earth. You've got millions of volts, millions of degrees that form these crystals that aren't formed geologically." So I kind of leaned towards this theory that perhaps they were looking for Fulgarite, for a very unique kind of crystal that would be formed by that kind of blast of energy. I'd never heard of Fulgarite before.
Can you pull up an image of that, Jamie? I'd like to see what that looks like. I know tritonite is something that happens when they call it nuclear glass. It happens when there is either a nuclear explosion or when asteroid impacts hit the Earth. That's it right there.
Well, these crystals are supposed to have very special properties for people who are into crystal stuff, but
what does that say there, Jamie? This is what happens. That's what can. Wow, that's wild.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. That's pretty wild. So it might be that they were looking for that. Well, who knows? It may be something that they use for energy. What is that? That's really when lightning struck Santa, created that thing? That's wild. That is wild. Look at that. It looks like a tree coming out of the sand.
I'm guessing that was wet sand.
Yeah.
But
yeah, well, it's right next to the beach. It must be wet. That is crazy. That's really wild, man.
And in another case, I saw it was a magpie, one of these birds known for how smart it is. There was a full, half-liter, plastic thing of water. It was just water, okay? A water bottle. And it was full. So the magpie goes over and sips out the water. Now, the beak is only, an inch and a half long or an inch at most, so it goes in until it can't reach the water anymore. So what does it do? It goes off to the side, gets a rock, just the right size, drops it into the water bottle.
It raises the level of the water.
Thereby displacing water. Here it is.
That is heavy.
You've got the video. There it is. And so it comes, and it goes back, and gets another stone, drops it in, and every time it drops it in, the water level rises, and it can drink more water. And it keeps doing this.
That's pretty amazing.
Okay? And so every time we study animals, they're smarter than we ever thought they were. So maybe for our own ego, we kept building ourselves up, saying how separate and distinct we are as humans in the animal kingdom, when maybe we're not as separate and distinct as we think we are. So now what's my broader point there about that I was making? I just distracted myself.
Something about UFOs?
Yeah, I know. I was trying to get back to UFOs on that.
The fact that we have high-resolution cameras in our pocket and we take videos of things that are very unusual.
Exactly. So here's video of a magpie doing Bernoulli experiments in a water bottle. Who would have known that even happened, right?
Right.
Okay. You can't bring the bird into a lab and maybe you could, but I don't know that anyone did. All right. Here's my point. In the 1960s and 70s, there were many, many reports of alien abductions. People said, the aliens came to me and they brought me in and then they released me. Do you have any footage? No, they took my camera. Or no, they zapped my film and now there's no image on the film. But there were countless stories. Well, now you can stream live from your camera anything that's going on in front of you. So if the aliens come and they want to abduct you, stream it. That would be instantly viral. Oh my gosh. You know, the stuff that goes viral is much less than that. A kitten that jumps to the table and falls, that goes viral? You don't think a video footage of an alien is not going to go viral instantly? But there's none. So I'm just saying, I'm thinking if we were being visited, somebody would have some good footage. If we were being visited, I'm thinking maybe Google satellite images would catch spaceships that are not airplanes moving on our surface. If we were being visited, I'm thinking we'd have something better than fuzzy monochromatic video of objects that apparently reveal themselves only to Navy pilots, right? So
one of the reasons is most of these sightings actually occur far offshore in the ocean. And the speculation is this is one of the ways, no, obviously I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on nice and tight.
Do your thing.
This is one of the ways that they monitor us. The best way to do it is to do it where they're hold their base where no one is around, which is the ocean.
No, that's not true.
So they go in the ocean, they pop up, and they fly out.
It's not true.
What do you mean it's not true?
It's not true. Yeah, nobody lives on the ocean. Yes, that's correct.
In the
but
ocean.
have you it lives down undersea.
This is what the speculation
Oh, okay.
is.
It lives down
That's
undersea.
why these transmedium devices have been these transmedium crafts have been observed.
If you are sure we are being visited by
I'm definitely
aliens
not sure.
and you don't actually have really good evidence, then you have to say that. Sure.
Well, you know that.
You have to say that. You have to say, this is really happening and they're observing us and they're concealing themselves in this particular way. You have to say that. And so
Right.
that's your way to maintain your alien belief system by saying that. And I don't have a problem with it. Go get them.
Mm-hmm.
Go get them. But all of what has been put forth as evidence for aliens, to me, is insufficient evidence to excite my interest, my research interest in devoting time to finding it out. But it definitely has excited other people. I have not stopped them. I am not saying defund the military program on UAPs, which of course is just updated UFO. Right?
I know they like to say that now because there's like a stigma to UFO.
Yeah, I know. That's just that's a really transparent,
sneaky way of doing it.
No, it's not even sneaky. It's actually, I think it's embarrassing. It's like maybe if we call them UAPs,
people take them seriously.
People will take them seriously. No, it's just.
I'm of the belief that they're probably akin to what we did on Mars. I don't think there's aliens in them. I have a feeling that these things are probes. And I feel like if you just think about biological entities flying through the universe, like why do that?
Right.
When you have sophisticated technology that's good enough right now from our like relatively primitive in consideration of what we think is possible a million years from now, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we can send that Mars rover around. We have a helicopter on Mars.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's multiple satellites flying through the universe right now taking images. We can do all that.
Yeah, but
Why
our
would
probes are not targeting the Martian military fighter pilots.
Because there's no Martian military. But if there were, we
They're
certainly
just
would.
sitting out in the open.
Right, but if we had something like, are you familiar with one of the most famous cases was a case with Commander David Fravor of the Navy, who encountered with one or two other jets off of the Nimitz. They encountered this thing that was shaped like a Tic Tac.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know the story.
Everybody knows this, yeah.
This story. It went from, they tracked it going from 80,000 feet above sea level to 50 in less than a second. They have no idea how it moved. There's no visible propulsion system.
Mm-hmm.
It was blocking their radar. It was actively blocking tracking.
This is what their sensors told them.
Exactly.
Just be clear about that.
And then
you're stating information as though it is facts.
I'm stating information as Commander Fravor
I don't care.
relayed
That doesn't matter. He's human,
Right.
and we're all human here. But
I
as
understand
a
what you're
scientist, when you're presenting information, you don't say, this thing was at 80,000 feet and it dropped to zero to sea level in 1 second, or whatever it was the measure.
Yes.
That's the wrong way to report it. What you say
Okay.
is, we have sensors that told us this is what happened.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay?
Yes.
That's a very important distinction.
Yes.
And so now, all right, your first question then, tell me about the sensors.
Yeah.
Okay, are they double checked? Are they, you know? And so, but if you're just going to say there's this craft at 80,000, then everyone is thinking about a craft, and no one is thinking about the sensor.
They actually saw it with their eyes too. This is something that they actually got.
You can't see something at 80,000 feet.
No, the actual visual on the craft.
Okay.
They didn't see it at 80,000 feet, but this craft, it's not just something that was tracked with equipment.
Got it. But they didn't see it at 80,000 feet.
Right.
That's my point. So, by the way, this level of attention I'm giving to the detail and the reporting of information, we do that with fellow scientists for much less
Oh, for sure.
than if we're being visited by intelligent aliens from another planet. Go to a scientific conference and watch the level of scrutiny we put on other people's work. If they have a sensor that has a new result, we'll say, did you calibrate the sensor? How long has the sensor been in use? I'll give you an example. Here's an example, okay? Do you remember Planet X?
Yes.
The search for Planet X.
Nibiru.
That was one. There were several incarnations of Planet X.
Right.
That was among them. Okay.
That was the most wacky.
I'm talking about 100 years ago, Planet X. Okay.
Yes. 100 years ago?
Well, there's several Planet X's, right? So. Uranus was moving weirdly. Nobody understood. Maybe there's a planet beyond it whose gravity we have yet to reckon in our equations. Boom! We discover Neptune. Wait a minute. Neptune is moving a little unfamiliarly. My phone is. Sorry about
You're
that.
going to drop that thing and break it with no case on?
So, I got the 12, and I can still do this. I'm just sorry.
Yeah,
it's
I
not
get
dropping.
it. Last time you were here, you had a broken case. You're a broken back. Remember?
So, why are you distracting me?
Sorry.
I was like on a roll. And
Neptune.
So Neptune,
Gravity.
we're looking at Neptune's orbit, and it's not following Newton's laws. And this is odd. Well, we've been down that road before. Uranus didn't follow Newton's laws. We proposed another planet, and we found it. So Neptune's not following all the laws of gravity that from all the other planets in the sun. There must be another planet out there, a Planet X. Let's look for it.
Is that Bode's law?
Bode's law is a fitting function that gets you. It got a little more attention than it deserved. It's just that planets, every next planet is about twice as far away from the sun as the previous one. So you just make a quick equation out of that. And,
that's it?
But it doesn't work for Mercury, and it didn't work for Pluto. And
I thought it was based on the mass of the planet.
no, not at all. Mass has nothing to do
Nothing
with it.
to do with it?
And it predicted the asteroid belt, but the asteroid belt, there's no planet there.
Right.
Okay. And if you glue together all the pieces of the asteroid belt, you get something like 5% the mass of the moon. So, it gave us the location of the asteroid belt, but that's not a planet. So, Bode's law, it's fun to play with, but, there are limits to how far you want to declare its relevance to the actual universe. So, we're out here at Neptune, and so I said, maybe there's a Planet X. Everybody started looking, including Percival Lowell, all right, back in the 1920s. And he says, I want to find Planet X, because something's perturbing Neptune. So he sets out looking for it, and he doesn't find it. Then he hires Clyde Tombaugh, and he dies, so he doesn't see the results of this. Clyde Tombaugh, he said, I can't find it either. I will just systematically search everywhere. Because if you think something's affecting you gravitationally, you ought to have some idea where it is to be tugging on you in that way. All right? That's not some kind of weird, it's like, you're moving differently. Where must the thing be to tug on you so that you're moving in that way? Right. No one could find such a Planet X. So Clyde Tombaugh said, it's got to be out there somewhere. I will systematically image the entire sky. All right? And you got to do it on multiple nights, because if something's moving, you'd see it change from one picture to the next. He does this, discovers Pluto. Was Pluto where Planet X was supposed to have been? No. Was Pluto the mass that Planet X should have been? Everyone assumed it was. But over the decades, the mass of Pluto got lower and lower and lower as our estimates got more and more accurate. And then we found out that Pluto is 1/5 the mass of our moon, made of half ice. And this is why Pluto got into trouble later in the 20th century. It's not because we had some vendetta against Pluto. Pluto just never belonged in that list to begin with. That's really how you need to think about it. Anyhow, there's still the matter of Neptune's orbit. Pluto did not have enough mass to make those changes. So the search for Planet X continued. So what happens? All right. 1993. A colleague of mine named Miles Standish. Okay? He's probably related to the Miles Standish on the Mayflower. He is an astrophysicist, looked at all of the data people were using to say Neptune's orbit was crooked. Looked at all the data. Then he found out that at one particular observatory, was it the gearbox or the timing mechanism, had just been cleaned or swapped out. Or there was some, because in the observing log, you write down everything because you just don't know. Okay, was there a glitch in the current? Was there a bird fly over? You make notes of everything. One of the observatories whose data was being grafted together with the other observatories had this sort of gearbox. I don't remember if it was a gearbox. There was some mechanical adjustment that was made. He said, I wonder if that had an effect on the positioning of this telescope. He removed those data from his analysis and fitted data to all the other telescopes that he had for the positions of Uranus. Of Neptune. When he did that, Planet X evaporated in that instant. In that instant. There was no Planet X. All the other data, when he connects across, removing the data from the one where the observing log said they did something different, Neptune fell right on to Newton's laws. And so since 1993, there is no Planet X. And Pluto, and were it not for that, we probably would have been a long time before we discovered Pluto because no one would have looked for it.
They found another Pluto.
Let me just finish the lesson there.
Okay.
The lesson there is you have information that you think is correct from your sensors. This was an observatory, a fine observatory. And you're going to say, this observatory says Neptune is misbehaving. But then you learned there was something wrong with the data. You throw it out. So I'm trying to say this happens all the time in science. You have to be careful what you're analyzing before you declare that what the thing measured is true, and then realign all your resources to address what you think is true when it might have just simply been a glitch or multiple glitches or anything. And we do this all the time in science.
If you look at this is another point that Tim, I'm just giving Tim a shout out to give him credit for the stuff that I've been noodling on for the past, yesterday and today I've had a lot of time just sitting on a plane looking out the window going, man, where are all the aliens? And so the other thing he talks about is like if the history of human civilization was an 800-page book. So say 160,000 years that we've been like Homo sapiens with like the kinds of civilizations that, even pre-civilizations, right? Nomadic peoples and so on. Then each page of that book is, 250 years? I think I'm doing that maths right, or 200 years, 200 times 800, 160,000. If you can open that book to almost any page and the same shit's going on.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Like all the way up
War.
until basically people are wandering around with pretty primitive tools. A few of them sort of figure out how to use fire. A few of them figure out like how to use metals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
A few of them figure out how to ride horses and domesticate animals. But it's basically the same shit for like 790 pages of the 800-page book of the civilization of our species. And then just towards the end, it's like the page before the very end, like the United States gets settled, Australia gets settled, the Industrial Revolution happens. And then like on the final page, if each page is 250 years of an 800-page book, it's the last half of the page. Nuclear weapons, going into space, landing on the moon, the evolution of the internet, vehicles, cars, climate change, like all of this. And it's like the final few, like Facebook and all this shit, Axie Infinity and little coins and your VR and your Orgasmatron and everything is like the final 2 lines of an 800-page book. So, sometimes sometimes people will say to me, people always think that they're living through amazing times, Josh. You think you're living through an incredible time, but I'm sure people were saying that in like the 1820s. I'm sure everyone was like, oh my God, things are changing so fast. And I'm like, no, I'm going to call bullshit on that. Yeah. If an alien who knew nothing about anything took that 800-page book, they'd be like, page 233 is roughly the same as page 722. Yeah. But they'd get to the end and they'd be like, holy shit, what's going to happen next? Like, I want to read the sequel to this book. I want to read, what's 801?
Well, that's when they would keep an eye on us. When they dropped Fat Man and Little Boy on Japan, that's when UFO sightings started happening all over the globe. There's a giant uptick in UFO sightings. Was it Kenneth Arnold was one of the first, I believe? He's the guy who spotted, I think it's Kenneth Arnold, was the guy that spotted the flying saucers. He was the first one to discuss them as saucer-shaped discs. But they started seeing them all over the place. Like there was encounters in Washington, D.C., and there was encounters over nuclear bases and where they said that they had shut codes down. And I don't know if there was alien life, and if there is alien life out there that's aware of us, I don't know if they would intervene because we don't really do much when we find chimps. The scientific community. Yeah. Well, the intelligent scientific community doesn't try to interfere with their life and give them guns and this is how you start a fire.
Right. But chimps have noticed that we exist.
Yes.
So, like, even if they don't come, like, I'm not talking about, like, why haven't aliens come and visited us, like, in Independence Day? I just mean, like, when we train our telescopes on the sky, why isn't there any evidence of, like, little flickering radio waves coming from somewhere? But a possible explanation is the one that you say, which is we're looking for the wrong things. Like, we've only been emitting radio waves for a century, and we might be just about to end that and go into some virtual reality metaverse or something, and maybe we'll meet them all there. Maybe we'll unlock some door of the Zuckerberg multiverse and be like, oh, here are a whole bunch of pre-existing civilizations of aliens who already exist on this platform.
Well, also, if you think about the various planets that we know exist just in our solar system and the conditions that exist on these planets, there's not a lot of them that can support life. Like they believe that Mars at one point in time had liquid water and they had an atmosphere and they were probably hit with some sort of an asteroid that wiped out everything. But other than that, you've got Europa that has frozen water on the outside.
I mean, that's close by, though. But when you're talking about the scale of the universe, it's almost like talking about rolling the dice on the numbers of COVID in a population. Like, you don't need very high numbers before once you go to that size.
My point was the solar system that we exist in is very unusual. And, we obviously have a planet that exists in this Goldilocks range, but we also have an extremely large asteroid belt. And it's indicative of the initial impact between Earth 1 and Earth 2. Earth 1 was a planet that got hit by another planet. Right. And that's what created the moon, and they believe that also created the asteroid belt. And if there's a solar system out there that didn't have that sort of event, so didn't have to worry about these intermittent cataclysms where, that's one of the things that Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock have done some great research on, is the indication that at least one time that we know of while civilization existed, it was probably almost wiped out. Right. And it's somewhere in the Younger Dryas impact theory, somewhere around 11,000.
Is this when we were all like 5,000 people or something, or like 10? There were only
that was 70,000 years ago, and that was, I believe, was Indonesia. That was a volcano eruption. That there was a super volcano that erupted that wiped out almost everybody. That we got down to like 70,000 people or 7,000 people. They don't know exactly, but it was right about there. And then we pulled back up. We did a lot of fucking, and here we are today.
But, thank God we didn't have an orgasmatron. Otherwise, people would have been in their basements with sore thumbs.
The point is, if there's a planet out there that doesn't have that issue, And let's imagine, because I don't know what the reality is when it comes to like ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia, or these incredible structures that these people built, where unfortunately because of the burning of the Library of Alexandria, we don't have the real records of how they did it or how they accomplished it or who they were, or even really how long ago they really made it. We know that some of them, they've done carbon dating on some of the stuff, and they know it's at least 2,500 BC, but there's some indications that some of it might be far, far older than that. So let's imagine that there was some sort of a civilization 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago that was very advanced and was allowed to advance without any interruption, without nuclear war, without solar flares, without asteroid impacts or supervolcanoes. Maybe they lived in a much more stable climate, and they got to a place where they're 1 million years more advanced than us. 1 million years. Imagine what the fuck we're going to be in 1 million years.
I can't even imagine what we're going to be in 100 years.
So
and then take 1,000 years, 10,000, 100,000.
Yeah, if that's the case, like if they were out there and they were watching us, they'd probably just make sure we don't blow ourselves up.
Yeah,
like
or not.
I think they would.
You
probably
reckon they're
rather,
benevolent?
Well, if you got to think that, I don't know if it's benevolent or malevolent. Like if you think about what a scientist is, it's someone who wants to observe but sometimes protect. Like we protect endangered species. Activists get together and they say, hey, there's only a few of these birds left. We have to do whatever we can to preserve them. If they have that same mentality about the human race, I think they would have a pretty standoffish attitude and just sort of wait for us to figure it out. And especially if they look at the acceleration of our innovation and this exponential acceleration of technology. And
I can't remember if it was like Michio Kaku or Neil deGrasse Tyson or one of those like great science guys who was saying like maybe any civilization that would be advanced enough to be able to reach out to us or to be noticed by us would also have to be the kind of civilization that would not be a predatory colonizing species, because in that case it would have devoured itself with internal squabbles. Before
Klingons.
then. You basically have to reach a certain level of spiritual and psychological wisdom and self-awareness and compassion in order to sustain yourself over the course of, so far we've had a couple of hundred years since the Industrial Revolution, and it's only been less than a century that we've had nukes. That we've had the ability to actually do some serious damage on a global scale. We're just kids. We are toddlers with an AR-15 right now. We don't know what we're doing, and we're going to have to grow up into adults, and we're going to have a grown-up civilization.